Hello and welcome to EMA's Health and Safety Podcast. My name is Kevin Chambers and I'm really pleased that you could join us here today. Before we get started, just a reminder that EMA is the official podcaster for the National Safety Show, which is on the 15th to 16th of July, and we hope that we'll see you there. Our guest today is the inimitable Alan McDonald. Alan is Head of Advocacy here for EMA, and today we're going to be talking about the changes to the legislation. So, Alan, thank you for coming. Welcome.
Looking forward to it, Kevin.
Good. So the old Act had some challenges, some issues in it, and it needed changing. Can you tell us what it was that we didn't like about the old Act?
Yeah, well, I'll probably tell you more about what our members didn't like about the old Act, because it's been around for a while. And as you know, we go out on the road often 3 times a year with our member briefings, always very popular. And boy, did we get our ears chewed off during those briefings and roadshows and things that we do about the problems around health and safety. I do think it became a bit of a catch-all for a lot of red tape and regulation and stuff like that. And actually, believe it or not, the regulation or the lack of it was the key problem with the old legislation.
The fact that there wasn't enough regulation.
There was none. Well, there was some, but what that led to is you lacked. So when you do a piece of legislation, the process they're going through now, when it's written, there's usually regulation that is the implementation of the legislation. So the regulation is your guidelines, right?
Yeah, and the regulations came out a year after the Act.
Well, yeah, but they weren't well written enough.
Okay.
And that's what caused the issues, because you got like private sector people coming in and saying, well, have I got a system for you? And they'd overcook it, right? Because health and safety too was used as a scare tactic in a lot of instances. And I think you got some of that private sector guidance. You got very risk averse organisations laying out their own guidelines. You know, for example, our road networking, NZTA and others who control the roads would have their own interpretation of what the Health and Safety Act should look like. So you'd get, say, for example, a quiet suburban street, and I've seen this, where a whole lane's coned off in the name of health and safety while they're working in a hole in the ground on the footpath.
For traffic management, right?
For traffic management. But then you get those really dreadful circumstances where we've seen road workers killed in very nasty crashes out on the open road. So, you know, that sort of variation would come into it. We'd hear stories out. So one of the things that we helped do when Minister Van Velden decided she was going to look at the Act and redo it, she asked us to facilitate some roadshows.
I remember those.
And typically, I can't remember how many she did, but she went from Christchurch to Northland, I think. But typically in the room, you'd have 30 or 40 people who really had a bit of an axe to grind about health and safety. So you would hear things like, you know, some of it was actually HAZChem, hazardous chemical management related, or some of it was imposed by a big company onto a small company, those sorts of things. And, you know, one of the things that we came across, which was quite common, was larger businesses allowing smaller businesses onto their premises or distribution centres or whatever, insisting that the small business had a level of liability and indemnity insurance that they really didn't need or couldn't afford.
Given the size of their organisation.
Yeah, so you're getting a very large business applying its standards to a very small business. Well, not its standards so much, because you've got to have the standards, but just the cost associated with that was way out of proportion to the actual risk.
And with New Zealand being a country which is largely full of SMEs, the Act, one size fits all, didn't necessarily fit some of the smaller organisations.
Well, yes, so 97% of our businesses are defined as SMEs, and most of them in international terms are almost micro businesses. But that doesn't mean you get to overlook health and safety.
No, of course not.
We have similar systems to other jurisdictions that we compare ourselves against, say, you know, UK, Australia, but we still kill and maim far too many people.
We do,
by comparison. Our per capita rate's way too high.
I think twice as many as in Australia, 4 times as many as in the UK.
Yeah, the numbers are dreadful.
So something had to change. Pleased that the government reached out to ourselves and others, going, well, look, we're thinking about making some changes. You know, what ideas have you got? What suggestions did we have for them?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things with the current minister, and she's done it also in the holiday, well, what's the Employment Leave Act it's now called, but the old Holidays Act. She's been very good at going out into business communities and asking them what their problems were. And as I said, we help facilitate some of those. But you do get that risk of a coloured, if you like, view, because it's coloured one way. If you're there to complain, if the whole thing is about the Health and Safety Act and the problems with it, then you're going to get an earful of problems, right? That's a self-selecting audience. And I think that's one of the things that there's maybe a bit of an imbalance in the new legislation that we're seeing, in that there's a carve-out for smaller businesses, so fewer than 20. The reporting restrictions or reporting levels aren't as high. And that's the bit that we have a problem with. We really like the risk-based approach that they're taking, because that's appropriate. If you're a small business and you're in an office, then your risk is nothing like a large distribution business or a port or anything like that. But then having that carve-out for businesses of fewer than 20, that doesn't mean they don't have high risks.
No. And some will have just as high as some larger organisations.
Well, I'd say one of the highest risks would be abseiling off Auckland and Wellington and Christchurch towers to clean the windows, right? Now, I doubt any of those businesses are over 20 people. They're highly specialised, and who wants to do that job? Sorry, not a bit of me at all. But but they would not escape the new legislation, but their requirements in it for reporting in particular are less, and we find that is a bit of an issue for a couple of reasons. The first one is that you have, and it's very common, a port's a classic example, where you'll have multiple PCBUs, so multiple different employers on a site during the day. In fact, I was down at Port of Tauranga only a couple of weeks ago, and they have up to 200 different PCBUs on site.
So that's
during
complex,
the day, just
during the work environment.
And so those businesses of fewer than 20 would have lesser requirements than the port.
Right, even though they're in the same workplace doing similar
So,
work.
The port's concern is that while they've got a very good system and one that works very well for them, to the point where the guys have to get out of the trucks and sit in a little shelter that they've made specifically for them when it's raining. So while they're taking a container on and off the truck, the driver actually has to get out of the truck, right? Which is a bit of an eye-opener. I hadn't seen that before. But their concern is that they'll be running a two-tier health and safety system, because those smaller PCBUs can say, well, I don't have that. So that's one concern. So that two-tier system on large sites.
And just with that, just for a second, that would then mean they're concerned that they would somehow come under the risk of the smaller organisation. If the smaller organisation doesn't have systems and processes in place that are good enough, that liability would then fall on the
It's not so much that, it's around the reporting and identification of problems. And I think that's something that gets confused in all the red tape and stuff, is that the reporting is a good barometer and sometimes a predictor of a larger problem. And that's the second point that I want to make around that. So 65% of claims under ACC are for those smaller businesses of fewer than 20 employees. So that shows you where the risk profile lies. But also the length of those claims, the length of time off for work is 28 to 35 days. So for a small business, they can't really afford to lose somebody for that long. So not having those smaller businesses reporting those slips, trips, falls, sprains, whatever you want to call them, that you lose that indicator and that predictor of perhaps a bigger problem. So that's a concern. And that's the concern for, I think, for those larger businesses with the smaller businesses on site. The smaller business will go, I don't have to report that, but the larger business will go, yeah, you do under our system.
That's right.
So, the smaller business can't really tell them to bugger off, because then they won't have the job anymore. But, there's that concern that you've got that two-tiered system and you're losing that reporting and the transparency and the observations that brings.
So what have we suggested, what would we suggest gets changed?
Well, so two things again, I'll come back to our first point. We really want to see good, strong regulation written around this. So I think the bill is coming back from Select Committee in mid-July.
Right, and we expect it to go through before the election, I assume?
Yeah, that's the timeline. So Minister Van Velden, she's doing those several big employment law changes, if you like. She wants them all done before the election. Obviously, she's not going to be around post-election as the minister or indeed in the government. But her goal and her drive, and I was with some of the MB team last week as well, is to make those big changes happen prior to the election.
Yeah, which I think provides a lot of certainty for people.
Yes, it does, and there'll be some long implementation timeframes as well. But around the implementation, it's really important that the regulation gets written,
yep,
and it's comprehensive,
yep,
and that's what was lacking in the last bill. So that's one thing that we really want to see to make sure the changes that we're making get bedded in, and we want some stability. So
yep,
if there's a change of government, for example, we want to keep the direction of travel. We want to keep that risk.
Yeah, well, look, I did want to ask you about that. Regardless whether there's a change in government or not, we're going to have a new minister.
Yeah.
Do we have a sense of whether that minister will? Again, we don't know who it is, but
no.
Do we have a sense that they would continue in the same direction, or is there a chance that things could change?
I think it will depend on whether or not there's a change of government.
Okay.
So if the government, the coalition remains similar in makeup, I mean, the number of MPs and things might vary a little bit.
Sure.
But I think the direction of travel, which we like, is that risk-based approach.
Yep.
I think that will stay in place.
Yep.
And we like that because it's appropriate for smaller or larger organisations to manage their own risk profile. And then as part of that too, you've got the move to ACOPs, where certain industries will write their own accredited plans.
Yep.
And Paul Jarvie, who I think many people will know as our health and safety guru.
Yep.
Paul's deeply involved in setting the standards for those.
That's great.
So those ACOPs will become integral to those industries. But also with that risk-based approach, you just get to manage how it works in your workplace.
Yep.
Small office, large complex business, you manage that risk. And most businesses know what the risks are.
Yeah, of course they do. No business wants to injure their staff, right?
Yeah. And then, so the other thing that we like too is that around that, so the minister's made quite significant changes within WorkSafe. So the WorkSafe Inspectorate has quite an unfortunate reputation, and some would say deserved, that they just come in and they're not interested in helping you. They're just interested in fining you and telling you you've done something wrong. And then you ask for advice on how to fix it. And they go, well, that's not my problem.
Yeah.
That's yours. So the minister has, and we heard that through that roadshow quite often, actually.
Yep. And that wasn't the original mandate, right?
No.
The original mandate was to engage, to educate, and enforce came at the end.
Yeah. And so the minister has quite deliberately told them to refocus on the educational side.
Yep.
And also as part of that, and the WorkSafe Inspectorate is undermanned comparatively to other jurisdictions. Our rates are quite low. So they're hiring more people, and they are to take that educative approach. Now, sometimes you get a behaviour pattern embedded in its government departments, councils, businesses, whatever. So that mindset change will be, I think, quite difficult to manage.
Yep.
But I think it's very important that they get that right, because smaller businesses are going to the private sector for a lot of their advice, and to us at the EMA, of course, our consultants in our team. But if there's good regulation, the WorkSafe Inspectorate is focused on the educational piece, they could and should become the assistance for those smaller businesses to comply and manage their risk appropriately.
So mindset change is required partly inside and within WorkSafe, but also partly inside and within organisations.
Yeah,
both parties need to change their mindset.
that mistrust, distrust thing has to go. But also, what we're doing now hasn't worked.
Yep.
Right? It doesn't work. We know that. We're seeing that because we are killing and maiming more people than similar jurisdictions.
Yep.
So you can say what you like about the current regulation, and it's all doom, gloom, and woe is me, why are they changing, and all that sort of thing. Well, we're changing because it's not working.
Yep.
So if we do see a change of government, for example, could we keep the major guardrails in place?
Yep.
And there'll be some tinkering around the edges. There always is. But let's not have another major change, a big flip-flop like we've seen over the last sort of decade or so. As governments change, everything goes bang, we're doing this, we're doing that.
Yep.
That's no good for business.
Well, we need a bipartisan approach.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I don't believe in bipartisanship. But what we do need is some stability around the major settings.
Yep.
Bipartisanship lasts as long as it takes for the opposition to become the government, and then they go and do what they want to do anyway.
All right.
But we do need that stability in the major settings.
Yep.
All right. And I think you'll find that most parties agree with that. We don't want to see major changes in direction, and that just confuses everybody and leads to gaps in the system, which will lead to more injuries.
And potential loopholes and stuff as well. I like to use the word guardrails. So guardrails need to stay where they are. The fact that we've moved to a risk-based approach is something that we absolutely endorse. Notwithstanding the fact that the definition of what is considered critical risk, that there's still a little bit of grey area around that.
And that's where the regulation can help as well. And you asked earlier what we don't like about the new legislation. Really not very happy with that carve-out for the fewer than 20s, but I think it's going to go ahead anyway.
So you think that carve-out will stay in there? Is that likely to be problematic? Will that enable smaller organisations maybe to, I don't want to use the word loophole, but to find ways to do perhaps less than they had been doing? Or do you think everyone will play, forgive the cliche, but people will play with a straight bat?
Well, I don't think, we don't want anyone to be doing less than what they're doing in terms of the mindset around health and safety. Some of the regulatory and paperwork stuff has got overcomplicated, and that's because of that lack of firm direction and firm regulation. So if we can get that bit right, that should reduce the paperwork, red tape stuff that's a bugbear for everybody. And don't get me wrong, that is a problem. But we still have to make sure we're managing that risk appropriately. And you know, if you're a small PCBU and you're going onto somebody else's site, that shouldn't exempt you from the safety regulations around that site. But that will require the regulations to be written in such a way as that it allows that larger PCBU, which does bear some of the responsibility to manage that particular risk. So that will become part of managing their risk profiles.
Okay. So just to summarise then, we are heading in the right direction. And if I've got anything wrong, please let me know. But, you know, we are heading in the right direction. We want strong guardrails there. We need a little bit more clarity with the regulations, just particularly around who's responsible for what and the type of reporting that's required. Slight change of mindset. WorkSafe need to become more willing and able to contribute to the education side of things from an employer's point of view. Slight change of mindset to hopefully get a bit more trust with WorkSafe. We all agree, you know, nobody wants their staff to get hurt, and even if there is a change in government, we would want, and here I guess I'm speaking for EMA, we would want us to continue moving in this direction, and hopefully that would be the case.
I think a couple of things around that. So we are moving in a direction that the EMA supports largely, that risk-based approach. Is it the right direction? We'll know when we see a reduction in the harm and the injuries.
And that will take some time.
And, you know, that's a pretty critical measure and a pretty obvious one. But if we are changing direction, we like the change of direction. The directional change with guardrails should stay in place. I think the other thing around that, and it's something that PJ Paul Jarvie talks about, is we need to start looking at health and safety with a different mindset. So it's the employee, because there's a lot of responsibility on the employee as well, coming to work and say, I'm going home safe to my family this afternoon. But it's the employer, as critical, if not more critical than the employee, saying, I have to create an environment that is safe for my workplace and for my team, because I want them all to go home at the end of the day. And the other mindset shift, I think, that comes with that, and this is PJ's point, it's a productivity thing. So if you're going to work and going home safe, well, done a good day's work, no issues lurking in the back of your mind, and you're not having to take 28 to 35 days off because you've been hurt,
you've been productive.
Then you're more productive.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much for coming in today. Really appreciate your insights and your expertise with regards to this. And let's look forward to the bill going through.
We'll see it soon.
All right, cheers. Thanks again,
Alan.
Thank you for viewing in today, everyone. I hope that you enjoyed this session. My name is Kevin Chambers, and you've been watching the EMA Health and Safety podcast. I look forward to seeing you at the National Safety Show, 15th to the 16th of July. Stay safe out there. Bye-bye.